Hello, DawgNation, and welcome into DawgNation at Large. I'm Kaylee Mansell with DawgNation insider Connor Riley, and as hard as it is to admit that I may have been wrong about something, that's how we're going to start the show. I think it was around this time last year when you had told me that you didn't like a Cinderella, you wanted to see the best compete, and at the time I thought that was a little bit absurd because who doesn't love a good Cinderella story? But now that we are almost towards the end of the NCAA tournament and it's the 4 number 1 seeds, I really don't know if I've ever been this excited for a Final Four because I genuinely don't know what the outcome is going to be. So here I am admitting that I was wrong, and I see the viewpoint.
Yeah, I'm excited for this weekend's games. I think on both the men's and the women's side, because the women's side, we've seen this for a while where the top teams always advance. And I think it makes it at least more interesting, especially as that game on the women's side has grown. And like on the men's side, I'm ecstatic. I think all 4 of these teams can win a national championship this weekend. That's pretty rare when it comes to college basketball. Well, I know there are some people out there that would love to see a Colonial Athletic team or a Missouri Valley Conference team just get drilled by 25 points by a superior team. I think all 4 of these teams can win an NCAA tournament, and I think this is the sport at its best.
And I will say this about the Final Four being all number 1 seeds, and we're going to do Meme Machine later in the show, and this won't appear on my memes, but the memes that have been all over the internet because, some girlfriends who maybe don't know about basketball and they all had, the number 1s making their Final Four. Like, I feel like it has bred some really great tweets amongst the internet.
Yeah, this was a year where, you try and galaxy brain, okay, do I have a 4 seed, a 3 seed getting to the Final Four? Just go chalk, and you're probably sitting pretty right now.
Yeah, once I got knocked out first round because I had Clemson going to my Final Four at that point, just might as well root for the number 1 seeds because I'm done. Well, anyway, that's probably the last time we'll have the chance to talk about basketball on the show, but I just wanted to acknowledge that Connor may have been right in this sense here on DawgNation at Large.
It's the show for the new breed of Georgia Bulldog fan. This is DawgNation at Large with DawgNation insiders Connor Riley and Kaylee Mansell.
So I have to admit, it has been fun talking about basketball these last couple weeks, but here on DawgNation at Large, we're all about Georgia football, so that's what we're going to talk about today. So on today's episode, we are going to talk about an update on the transfers. G-Day's coming up. Maybe you need a reminder of who came in and what we've heard about them this far. Then we'll do our Dog Bite segment where we'll cover a variety of topics, including the most recent coaching hires, as well as provide a much-needed injury update headed in to the spring game. Then we'll do our Meme Machine, which is our favorite sports tweets of the week. It doesn't always have to be football. And then spring has sprung, so we're going to do a draft of great spring things. But let's go ahead and start with this. With G-Day coming up, I thought it was important to do a refresher on where things stand with the transfers that Georgia has brought in. 6 transfers. If you need a reminder, we'll show it to you here on the screen. Mostly safeties and wide receivers. You've got the Branch brothers, Zachariah and Zion, as well as Adrian Maddox, who came in from UAB, Noah Thomas, the wide receiver from Texas A&M, Jaden Harris, the safety from Miami. Then there's the Branch brothers, and then you have Micah Bell, who came over from Vanderbilt. Now, before we get into the specifics of everything that we've gotten to hear about them, Connor, do you feel any differently about this year's group as opposed to the conversation that we were having last year? Because, just looking at the numbers, Georgia brought in 11 last year and only 6 this year, but I feel like the quality is what's different.
Yeah, it's a smaller group for sure, and I think as we sit here right now in early April, I think they know that Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch not only have to hit, but they have to really pop. And, they've made some consistent additions via the transfer portal at the wide receiver position. You can go Dominic Lovett, you can go Colby Young. Last year they bring in Lennon Humphreys as well. They kind of need those guys to come in and be, if not the best, at least top tier options in that wide receiver room, because they know that they're relying more this year on the players around the quarterback rather than the quarterback to elevate those on the offense. So they need Zachariah Branch and his speed to make a difference, and it sounds like he has so far. I know Jeff Sentell has talked up a lot about what Noah Thomas has been able to do. These guys, I think, help give Georgia better depth. They have something to prove transferring in from USC and Texas A&M respectively. And I think that this transfer crop, I think, is really going to be defined by what they get out of those wide receivers. I know they bring in 3 defensive backs. There's a lot of interest in what those guys bring, but I could also very well see Georgia just leaning on the guys that have been in the program for a while at safety. I think the success of this transfer class really comes down to how much do you see out of Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch, and how much do they build, not just off what they did in their previous stops. Thomas was Texas A&M's leading receiver a season ago. Zachariah Branch was a dynamic return man for USC. They need to be better in Georgia uniforms than they were in their prior uniforms, and that hasn't always been the case when Georgia has brought in transfers.
Well, the interesting thing, too, about there being fewer transfers this year is I just feel like we've gotten to hear so much more about them from Kirby Smart. So let's go ahead and start with the Branch brothers, who we have arguably heard the most about out of any of the transfers that came in. Here's Kirby Smart on the Branch brothers.
Well, they both love football, and that's the number one quality you got to have at Georgia. You better love it and be passionate about it. I do believe that. They love football. They're still adjusting to speed of practice, tempo of practice, volume of practice. It's all the things that they wanted to come here for, which is the intensity, the competition, the good on good, the grind, let's call it. And they embrace that. They're both learning. Again, they're not like freshmen because physically they're way past freshmen. They're both physically developed. They're both really good athletes. But the mental part for both of them is, they're working through that curve of, hey, look, we're in practice number 10, and I've seen this before. We've had many a guy come through here, and they get it with each and every practice, and they get better. He has extreme quickness. And he's an explosive playmaker that we got to find ways to get him the ball as well as all the guys around him in the offense.
So although they're still making those Georgia practice adjustments, that's something that all the transfers and the incoming freshmen just have to get used to. But even aside from that, I think you can still tell how genuine Kirby's comments about those two are. We've heard a lot of negativity this spring from Kirby Smart about sloppiness and people not wanting to be coached. And I don't think that necessarily applies to these two. Plus, I believe their dad is some sort of like sports performance coach. So I think they're the type of players that have that hustle that Kirby's seeking out and people that he wants to bring in the transfer portal.
Yeah, and hearing from Kirby and Zachariah this week, they have certainly gone to lengths to try and sell that these guys fit culturally with what Georgia has been looking for from the transfer portal. Because I think on its face, USC and Georgia could not be more different in terms of how those programs are run and how they have fared in recent seasons. And so there's always a risk when you take guys from the transfer portal and that they might not fit what you want to have on your team culture-wise. But I think with all that has been said about the Branches so far, they come in, they want to work hard, they want to play for each other, they want to go out there and win, rather than just further establish their own agendas. So I think on that front, it is very encouraging to hear Kirby Smart and Zachariah Branch talk so much about the culture fit here at Georgia, rather than what they necessarily just bring in terms of an X's and O's or an athleticism standpoint.
Yeah, and even specifically when it comes to Zachariah, Kirby Smart had more to say about him. So here's Kirby Smart on Zachariah Branch as a leader.
I think he's very capable of leading. Both of those kids in our skull sessions are vocal, not afraid to talk. I think they're still trying to find their place amongst the team. You don't just walk in a team here and just say, all right, I'm a leader. You earn that. And he's in that process. He's done everything we've asked him to do to get better at that, and continues to develop.
So specifically when it comes to Zachariah, I think you bring up a good point about him fitting within the culture. I mean, he's got all the makings of what we view to be a good Georgia player. He's got the speed, the assertiveness as a leader, also the natural talent. Those are the things that we've been able to take away from what everybody has said about him. But looking at G-Day next week, I think the thing I'm more interested in seeing is what type of chemistry have him and Gunnar Stockton been able to build, because I know they've only had a short amount of time together, but I think in that short time they've gotten to be together, they have spent a lot of time with each other developing that connection. So that's going to be one of the things that I definitely have my eye on at this upcoming G-Day.
Yeah, I would push back on that just because I think we've seen with G-Day over the years, there have been guys that have had big G-Days, put forth impressive showings specifically at wide receiver. Shout out Jonathan Rumpf, who then don't really go on to match that over the course of the season. And so I think you are right, Kaylee, with the chemistry aspect with Gunnar Stockton. It does seem like there is something there between Zachariah Branch and Gunnar. They're going to need to continue to build that, not just on G-Day, but throughout the rest of the offseason here. And so while I know many will be looking to see how often Gunnar throws to Zachariah during G-Day and what his statistical numbers ultimately look like, I think it's far more important what happens after G-Day for Zachariah Branch and his development at Georgia rather than what we ultimately see out there on the practice field.
So in terms of Zion Branch, it kind of feels unfair that we group them together, and maybe I'm guilty of doing that as well. But it's not like they brought Zion in just to have a better chance at getting Zachariah. I mean, obviously they had to see something in him, and it's not like he's going to walk in and be a guaranteed starter on this team. But with his size, I think that there's a chance that he gets into the mix. What's the best way for him to go about doing that, Connor?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. It's his size. He has a different body type than I think just about anybody in that Georgia secondary. At 6'2", 210 pounds, he stands out physically from the rest of Georgia's secondary there. He's a guy who, again, he hasn't started and played a down-by-down basis yet, but he was able to find a way onto the field for USC a season ago. Georgia has some more experienced guys, but I think that size at the star and safety positions are going to be very, very beneficial for Zion Branch. He's ultimately got to pick up this defense quickly. They need to ask a lot from their defensive backs, and especially at a position where Kirby Smart played. Kirby Smart is coach. He's very hands-on in instructing that position. They brought Zion Branch in because they believed on his individual merits, not tied to his brother, he could help this team this season. So I'm interested in seeing how things sort of sort out between he, Adrian Maddox, and Jaden Harris, because they are sort of all competing, I think, for ultimately maybe one spot, because I feel pretty strongly Janelle Aguero is going to be this team's starting star or starting nickelback corner. And so you have guys like the transfers, but also Ja'Cory Thomas, and Chris Peel, Kyron Jones competing for that safety spot opposite KJ Bolden.
Yeah, you bring up Jaden Harris and Adrian Maddox. Now with Dan Jackson and Malachi gone, there are multiple guys kind of competing for the same spot. Jaden Harris and Adrian Maddox are two of those. Kirby Smart spoke on them as well. So here's Kirby Smart on Jaden Harris and Adrian Maddox.
Flashes. But flashes don't win games. Consistency does. And, we're looking for some more consistency out of those positions. I mean, y'all tell me how many snaps we lost. I don't know, 2,000. I mean, we probably took 1,000 snaps last year on defense. And if we took 1,000 snaps, Malachi and Dan took 1,000 each. That's 2,000. So I know KJ played a good bit, but there's a lot of snaps missing out there. And these guys are coming into a defensive system that requires heavy communication, and we're not going to let the offense dictate to us. So we have a lot of things we do to create an advantage when an offense does something, and you got to be able to communicate to do that.
So obviously we've heard a lot about Zachariah and Zion, maybe not as much about these two. And what's interesting about them is Adrian Maddox has by far the most experience of any of the transfers they brought in, but coming from UAB, you're playing at a lower level. Now, Jaden Harris comes from Miami, and he has starting experience from them, but maybe not as much as Adrian Maddox. I don't know how this safety situation is necessarily going to play out. Has there been anything that you've heard, maybe rumors-wise, or I guess Brandon calls it the rumor mill, about where things stand with this group in particular?
Yeah, I think we can look at history here and maybe tamper down expectations that some of these safeties come in and help or play a huge impact year one, because they've pretty consistently brought in safeties over the year. And, Jake Pope didn't do a whole lot in his first year, and he's already transferred out of the program. Tyke Smith was hurt often during his early time at Georgia and really didn't make an impact and become the impact player that he was until his third year in the Georgia system. J.R. Reed, obviously a huge transfer find when he transferred from Tulsa, but he transferred in at a time where he had to sit out a full year. So he had a full year in the system before he was asked to go out there and make plays in this secondary. I think it helps moving forward that Zion Branch and Jaden Harris both have multiple years of eligibility, and that way they are potentially long-term pieces like, say, London Humphreys was a season ago. But I do think that maybe we're quickly overlooking guys like Ja'Cory Thomas and Kyron Jones, who have been in this system, who know what Kirby Smart is asking for them, who have, I think, an easier pathway to being more consistent rather than just displaying the flashes that obviously suits guys like a Zion, an Adrian, or a Jaden.
Yeah, you make a good point. There are transfers that UGA has brought in the past that maybe didn't get as much playing time as we had discussed or maybe we had thought in our heads, but there's one person in this group that I don't think that applies to at all, and that's Noah Thomas, perhaps the most plug-and-play guy out of all the transfers that have come in, apart from maybe somebody like Zachariah Branch. I know we've joked that Jeff Sentell, has completely bought in on all things Noah Thomas. I think out of everybody that has come in this group, he'll be the most game-ready and will not have to necessarily worry about competing for a starting spot. I think he's got it.
Yeah, Thomas has a lot of inherent advantages when he transfers in. He's previously played under James Coley, recruited him to Texas A&M. Thomas has played already at an SEC level. He led Texas A&M in receiving last season, and he's playing a position at that outside receiver spot, the X spot, where they just haven't had a lot of players go through there in recent years. That team sorely missed a player like Thomas a season ago. Now they do bring Colby Young back as well. So you wonder if maybe Colby Young and Thomas are competing for the same slot or same sort of reps. But I think that Noah Thomas brings something different to this Georgia offense, even more so than Zachariah Branch in his speed. And I just think his ability to win in a phone booth, the ability to make contested catches, is something that Georgia's offense very much needed last season. And I think he provides that in coming in from Texas A&M this offseason. So I think that of the guys we've sat here and talked about thus far, Thomas, and maybe this is the Jeff Sentell propaganda doing its work, I think is maybe best positioned to make, at least in those early games during the season, an immediate impact for Georgia.
And according to Jeff, will be Georgia's leading receiver by the end of it all. So that's what we know about Georgia's 2025 transfers this far. Now, of course, G-Day will not be televised next week, so make sure to tune in to Brandon Adams' postgame show, so hopefully we can provide some good insight on what the transfers were able to do during G-Day. And when we come back in just a minute, we'll extend on that G-Day conversation as well as talk about a variety of other things. But first, we want to remind you that here on DawgNation at Large, we are always so excited to partner with Zagoria Law Firm. And what we love about Zagoria Law Firm is that they are the only law firm in the state that specializes in representing people bitten by dogs as well as those who have been knocked down by dogs. That's right, dog fans. They are the official dog bite injury lawyers of the Georgia Bulldogs. They literally wrote the book on how to win these cases. So if you or a loved one has been hurt by someone else's dog, give them a call at 833-GA-DOG-BITE, that's DOGBITE, or visit ZagoriaLaw.com. Now let's do dog bites. So something else I feel like we should probably update people on before G-Day takes place next week is the injury report. We've got a couple pages of this, so I'm just going to go through them really quick, and then we'll let Connor elaborate on it. We'll show you the first one here. You got Isaiah Gibson, Drew Bobo will be limited, Gabe Harris, Colton Heinrich, Christian Miller, Jalen Morgan, all recovering from that labrum surgery. Next page, we've got Ryan Montgomery with ACL, Branson Robinson, Roderick Robinson, Brett Thorson, Daniel Calhoun out with a foot, Tyler Williams out with ankle. One more page for you. All these guys are limited. Monroe Freeling, Ernest Green, Joseph Jonah Ajanye, and Dalen Everett. Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm really surprised at this point with everybody that is out that this is honestly still happening.
Yeah, Georgia wants to have physical practices, and there is a toll that is sometimes taken there. I think of those that we saw, the most interesting one is Drew Bobo. They don't have a ton of experience behind Bobo at center, and Bobo himself only has 2 career starts to his name. And I do wonder, with G-Day coming up, and we're a little over a week away from it, how does that injury impact what they may try to go out there and do? I think obviously you would proceed with caution there with Bobo having a hyperextended knee. That means more snaps for guys like Malachi Tolliver, literally in that case, because he'd be the one snapping the football. And then freshman Cortez Smith. Maybe they work in some of the guys they've been cross-training at center. Tate Ratledge famously did that a season ago for Georgia. But in terms of an impact on G-Day, because all of these guys will be fine and ready to go by the time fall camp starts in August, that Bobo injury, and in terms of impacting what G-Day ultimately looks like, is the most interesting one at this point in time.
Apart from Bobo, which is the most impactful on how the rest of this spring plays out?
I think the Ernest Green one is another one to keep in mind. He's playing with a dislocated finger. He's effectively got his hand balled up. And so that, I think, opens more snaps at the tackle spot for guys like Jaw Jackson, Bo Hewley, Jamal Merriweather, Marcus Harrison, and how that impacts. Because I think you can pencil in Ernest Green as a starting player on this Georgia offensive line when they open the season against Marshall. The question is, at what position is that ultimately at? So I think the two on the offensive line, as boring as that might seem to people, is the most impactful as we make the closing run here towards G-Day.
I think the one I'm most disappointed by is probably Isaiah Gibson. That was someone that I wanted to hear a lot about coming out of spring, so I hate that we're not going to get the chance to see him at G-Day. But, all right, Georgia's got some new hires. This happened a couple weeks ago, but we haven't been able to touch on it yet. They bring in 2 offensive assistants, and John Lilly, Bill Rauscher. Do we know anything more about their role, and what does this kind of say about where things stand with the offensive coordinators?
Yeah, Georgia's had some turnover in terms of its off-field support staff. They lose Montgomery Van Gorder, who worked with quarterbacks. He is now with the Philadelphia Eagles there. John Lilly, obviously a name Georgia fans know well, served as the tight ends coach here from 2008 to 2015, worked with Mike Bobo. During that time, he's got a lot of familiarity in and around Athens. I think he's only going to further help Todd Hartley's room. And I know Georgia fans may not want to hear this, but in the day when Todd Hartley gets hired as a head coach somewhere, something I do believe is coming, I feel like Lilly is a pretty easy guy to slide into that tight end room and keep things on the tracks there. As far as Rauscher, obviously he seems like an offensive line candidate there, someone who is going to help that room, has a lot of NFL coaching experience, and there are just a lot of eyes on that room with how Stacey Searles did a season ago and all the injuries that they're dealing with at this point in time, and the fact that they have to replace 4 starters from last season's group.
Spring portal, less than 2 weeks away, starts April 16th. I'm glad that it is after G-Day this year. I'll never forget my first G-Day and hearing that Bear Alexander had transferred right before. Glad we don't have to have that kind of whole debacle again. How active are the Dogs going to be? Because last year I just feel like we hyped it up so much, like it was going to be this big thing, and then nothing really happened. Is it just going to be more of the same this year?
I would lean that way. I think the important thing to keep in mind here is that you cannot transfer within the SEC. And so that limits the pool that Georgia is able to potentially pull from. And we know in the past they like to have SEC level players. But at the same point in time, I do think that means they're not as likely to lose top end contributors. I'm not saying that won't happen. This time a year ago, nobody thought that Christian Miller would be a guy that was going to flirt with the portal like he did. He ultimately elects to remain at Georgia. But I do think we've seen enough now, especially at a place like Georgia. They'll have a few guys enter the transfer portal, but none all that significant. And I think the spring portal, much, much quieter than the one we see over Christmas.
And that makes everyone's life a little bit easier. I think we can all agree. So my thing with G-Day, we know that things have changed with G-Day. That was kind of to be expected. I guess my only question, this might be a stupid one, but just out of strict curiosity, is it set in stone? Like, there's no turning back anymore between now and next Saturday. Like, is it finalized?
They're going to do something in Sanford Stadium. They are charging money for tickets, which you can buy. What that ultimately looks like, I don't know. I don't know if that's been decided on at this point. Kirby Smart has reiterated time and time again, injuries are probably going to play a factor in how much of this looks traditionally like an old school G-Day spring game. They know that this is their 15th and last spring practice, so they probably want to do something. They want to put on a show for it. They're going to have a lot of high-end recruits in town, potentially 5-star quarterback Jared Curtis. And so I'm very interested in seeing what this looks like. Does it look like a more traditional practice with fans in the stands, or does it have a game day type feel to it? I imagine it might be a little bit of a hybrid, but I think Kirby Smart knows that this is an opportunity for the Georgia program to showcase itself. And while this game won't be televised, I think that makes it maybe a little bit more special for those who are making the pilgrimage to Athens to witness this.
Yeah, and again, we'll have full coverage of G-Day on DawgNation Game Day Show with myself 2 hours before the start of G-Day, and with Brandon Adams directly after the game for all things Georgia football on G-Day. So the House settlement is coming up. Final approval hearing is going to be Monday. The judge is set to hear any objections and possibly approve a $2.8 billion settlement that would be paid out to college athletes should the settlement be approved. It would open the door for revenue sharing, potentially a hard cap to roster limits, and other aspects that figure to alter not just college football, but all of college sports. What do you expect to come out of this?
Yeah, nothing is finalized yet. I think the teams themselves are interested in seeing how this all goes with the various objections that have been had in there. You're going to hear a lot of sports media people talk about the importance of this, and I think it's very understanding that the common fan is maybe just starting to get their head wrapped around it and what it means. It means that schools are going to be able to start sharing money with players, directly paying them. I think in maybe some ways this lessens the impact of NIL, but obviously that remains to be seen there. Kirby Smart this week had some very strong comments about how he feels the direction of the sport is going right now. I think a lot of this is tied up in the short-term uncertainty with the House settlement. And part of that settlement as well, there is talk of NIL enforcement and how that is all engaged and done with. So I think should this pass next week, we're not certain that it is at this point in time, it has an impact to greatly alter not just college football, but all college sports, as the revenue will be distributed among the various teams on college campuses.
Yes, Kirby Smart had some very, very choice words about this. If you haven't had the chance to see it, I would go back and encourage you to watch Kirby Smart's most recent press conference, and you'll know whenever he's talking about it because his face gets a little bit more red. So in just a moment, we're going to bring on our good friend Cody Chaffins. We will do our favorite tweets of the week. But want to give a quick shout out to Daytona Beach. It's time to start planning vacations for early summer, late summer, and now is a good time to look at Daytona Beach. A lot to do. You can kayak, you can golf, you can shop, which is what I prefer to do, or you can just lay out by the beach. Super easy access. If you're in the state of Georgia, you can just make the drive. If you're a little bit further away, then you can fly directly into the Daytona Beach International Airport. Either way, it's super accessible no matter where you're at, and you can find out how to score great deals on coastal accommodations at DaytonaBeach.com/hotel deals. That's DaytonaBeach.com/hotel deals. It's been a while since we've got to see our good friend, so let's go ahead and bring in Cody Chaffins for Meme Machine.
Who's that coming down the track? Who's that coming down the track? It's a Meme Machine and Randy Black. It's a Meme Machine and Randy Black. No, no!
Long time no see, partner.
Yes, hello everybody. There we go. Fix that. Yeah, it's good to be back.
The man who presses the buttons.
Sometimes incorrectly.
Hey, multitasking is hard. Trust me. I'll kick us off this week, and this one is actually for my good friend Connor, who expressed some concern about the ways that people were complaining about refs. You can see that this is someone who's very clearly high up in a March Madness arena, and it says, "Call it both ways, ref." I thought that was appropriate for this week's show, considering Connor's rant last week.
I will say this, you know, at the NCAA tournament, a lot of these seats are courtside, something we don't normally get at Georgia basketball games. And so being that close to the floor, you hear fans yell a lot of very interesting things, and it's always very funny to watch them and hear them interact with the game while you're also seeing something there as well.
Oh, yeah.
Always weird, too, to see in these big venues where they've got the elevated floor and even the bench, they're watching it eye level with the floor. It's always so strange.
All right, Cody, what you got?
Yeah, this one came out on Twitter earlier this week. How about John Gruden giving a shout out? So Georgia sent him the merch box, which, you know, if they need our address, we'll send it to them or whatever. But so watching Gruden open the box was just fascinating, just because he has such a kind of all over the place, like ADHD, like personality. And he just all of a sudden just starts shouting out random Richard Seymour, Herschel Walker, Malachi Starks. And he just kind of goes through rosters from now since 1980 and the Notre Dame game, and he talked a lot of. He dropped Larry Munson's name in the middle of this thing. Very fascinating if you want to watch it with the sound, but it was fun to watch him do that. So if you haven't seen it, that's worth checking out.
Watching him cut that box was a struggle.
Who amongst us hasn't had issues with unboxing? And I'll say this, you know, if the Georgia football equipment staff, they want to send us one, like, we don't need 3 separate boxes here. We just need one box and we'll divvy it up however it goes.
Kaylee, what's your shoe size?
I'm a 10. Women's 10.
Okay.
Or a men's 8.5. Whatever you fancy. Yeah, I'll take some shoes. I could use some ones for game day.
All right, Connor, what you got?
Yeah, a little off the beaten path here, but this is a fantasy football. This is like the old school ESPN fantasy football roster. They've obviously changed it around a little bit. The caption, "Get Me to God's Country," an homage to Morgan Wallen after his appearance on SNL this week. And it just, I love fantasy football. I have a group that I've played with for over a decade, and this brought a joy to my heart of the simpler times in fantasy football where it was just easy to manage, just move and drop. You don't have to click 18,000 things, and I think it ties in nicely with some of the pop culture of today's time.
Go ahead.
It was like the last time I was good at fantasy football.
I was really hoping that somebody was going to use a "Get Me to God's Country" meme on this show today, and I should have figured that it was going to be Connor.
I saw a few for the Braves. Mark Bowman for the Braves beat writer dropped that after their 0-7 start. But when I look back at it too, I look down just the names, right? Just takes you back. How about Kellen Winslow? I'm a soldier. And Felix Jones on the bench. That's an interesting flex play for me right there.
Like, I think to the meme that Cody used, like John Gruden, he was not just naming Hall of Famers like Champ Bailey and Richard Seymour. Like we heard a Lars Tate reference, we heard a Rodney Hampton reference. Like he went deep in the Georgia football archives to pull some of those names out.
Yeah, Tim Worley got a shout out. But very interesting, good stuff right there. All right, so what we got next, Kaylee?
So I'm gonna give a shout out really quick, and then we're gonna do our spring draft.
All right, let's do it.
I love doing this shout out, and that is to the Finnish long drink. It is something I look forward to each and every weekend, and you best believe that this Saturday I'm going to have one, and I would encourage all of you, DawgNation, for you to have one as well. If you're not sure where to find them, you can actually visit thelongdrink.com, go to the search bar in the top corner, and you can put in your zip code or the city in which you live in, and it'll tell you where the nearest one is. But whatever bar you go to or wherever you like to go to dinner, I would just ask to see if they have them because they're popping up in more places. It's a pre-made gin cocktail, and they've got a flavor for everyone. I don't like gin at all, but I don't know what it is they put in that Finnish long drink. It is so good. They're so easily drinkable. So make sure you visit thelongdrink.com to figure out where you can find the nearest Finnish long drink. I feel like this is good. We've got the NFL draft coming up, so now is kind of the appropriate time to do a spring draft.
So to give me the details, how is this one working?
Oh, I guess normal. We'll flip to see who goes first. Snake draft, 4 picks total. It's not a competition.
And it's just spring things.
It's just
it could
spring.
Be anything spring related. Whatever you associate spring with.
Yeah, spring.
All right. So, I'm going to flip. We'll see who, Kaylee or Connor, goes first. Kaylee, call it.
Tails.
It is a heads. Connor, would you like to kick or receive here?
I will let Kaylee pick first.
Patio sitting on the patio, even with the pollen, I don't care. I love when we go somewhere and everybody's like, should we just sit outside? I'm like, was there another option? Of course we're going to sit outside. So with my first pick of the spring draft, give me a patio sit.
Mm-hmm. Cody, are you drafting with us?
No, I'm going to let you guys do this.
Okay. I'm going to take the Masters. It is the most spring sport event. The foliage there is incredible. I think everyone, certainly in the state of Georgia, but just golf fans in general, it is a major sporting event. It almost always delivers. Hoping somebody can knock off Scotty Scheffler this year, but I'm going to take the Masters.
I like it. I like this time of year when I get on TikTok and I see people bringing out their Masters fashion or trying to recreate the pimento cheese or egg salad sandwich. So I like that pick. I think that was a good number 2. So you can go ahead and give me what else you got.
All right, this might be a controversially high pick here, but we're going in the food realm. And I associate this food in large part with Easter. I've had it many a times there. I don't know if it is explicitly with spring, but it's something I associate with it. We're picking deviled eggs. You get a nice deviled egg. Wow.
No.
Kaylee being anti-deviled eggs. That's a tough look. That is a big win for me. Deviled eggs are great. Nice to have a little Easter get-together. I am a big fan of deviled eggs in the springtime.
in my head, there's no worse pick than that. There is a lot of really disgusting and embarrassing and gross things that I would eat before I had a deviled egg.
Deviled eggs are so good. A little paprika on top.
You can do so many things.
Okay, well, that makes my last two really easy because I don't have to worry about Connor taking any of mine. Festival season, like outdoor festival season, like a beer and wine fest, or they just did the one in Brookhaven last weekend. Like, I don't know. I feel like it just encourages you to get out in a different setting. You know, in the wintertime, there's only so much that you can do because the weather makes it limited. So it just forces you to get out and do things that maybe you wouldn't usually do with your friends, and plus kind of contributes to just like a better environment when you're outdoors with your friends and you get to have good food from pop-up shops or whatever. So I like this spring festival season. And then I also was going to go with sort of like a food-ish type pick. And I'm not going to call out any specific brands because we don't do that on this show. But I love a spring seasonal drink. I'm not a pumpkin spice girl or like cinnamon or peppermint. Like that's not really my thing. But I love any type of spring drink, something that includes lavender or honey or just something that's a little bit on the fresher side. That's when I do participate in the idea of some sort of seasonal drink, because fall, winter, don't want anything to do with it. I like a spring seasonal drink.
All right. For my next pick, we're going something that, you know, as an adult, I don't get to experience as much anymore. But I think if you've got young kids, if you're a teacher, this applies a lot to you. We're going with spring break. This is just, I think, a cherished, like a week off, late March, early April. It's a great time to go see the country. I know Cody recently went and saw the Grand Canyon. You know, Brandon Adams is going to take some time off next week. I think that spring break is such an American culture for young people in particular. I'm a big fan of it. And so I feel like to get that at the third spot in our draft of all things spring, I feel really, really good about that pick there.
I didn't know adults had spring break, so I mean, I guess you make a good point.
If you've got kids, you've got spring break. So maybe that's something to
Do you have a kid that you didn't tell me about or something?
I do not.
You two are in this window. You will have spring break. You missed spring break from college, and it'll come back again when you have kids. So you're in like this 15-year window. Spring break's coming back.
I had horrible luck with spring breaks in college. One canceled for COVID. One couldn't get off because I had work. So maybe that's why spring break doesn't mean as much to me as it does to other people.
All right.
Okay.
And for my last pick, I am going to go back into the realm of sports. I know March Madness is an easy thing to pick, but I'm actually going to take the NBA version of playoff basketball. I know, right, like the NBA season is too long right now, but those first and second round games that take place in April, early May, I am a huge fan of basketball. I love watching it. It's super competitive. Sure, there are some blowouts. Yes, you have to struggle to find some games on NBA TV. But this postseason for basketball, I could not be more excited. I know the finals sometimes don't always deliver. But the finals are a summer sport. The actual meat of the NBA playoffs is in springtime. And so I'm super excited for this spring when it comes to NBA basketball.
Okay. My last one is... and maybe this is like what deviled eggs was to me. This might be to Connor. The DawgNation cruise. I am so excited. It is almost here. It is literally all I have been able to think about. Maybe that's what my version of spring break is. It's going to be the DawgNation cruise. We have such a good group going this year. Cody's going to be there. Jack's going to be there. I'm excited to meet everyone and also just be able to spend some time on a ship. And I don't know, I just did all my shopping for it already, and I kind of like started putting the pieces together to make this the best cruise ever. So I am absolutely so stoked because spring means DawgNation cruise. And so I would like to close out with that because I knew you weren't going to take it.
Very, very strong. So Kaylee went patio season. Cannot argue with that. Like you said, even with the pollen, we've had to sit inside. Even if you take the laptop outside and do a little work from home outside is the best. Festival season, she went with number 2. I can agree with that. Seasonal drink, and she did not mention the mint julep, which goes with the Kentucky Derby also, which is a great spring thing. Could have been maybe on mine. DawgNation Cruise, also very excited. So patio, festival, seasonal drink, DawgNation Cruise for Kaylee. Masters, can't argue with that. I also kind of associate that with food in my life. So I think of Masters and pimento cheese and egg salad sandwiches. So then deviled eggs. Yeah, at our house on Easter, everybody brings their own deviled eggs. And this is like, so my stepsisters, they've got the ones with jalapenos, or somebody's looked up, and it's actually really, really good, and they don't last very long, so love that.
No.
Spring break, getting ready for doing some spring break with the kids next week. We're going a little hiking, so excited about that. And playoff hoops, it's easier for a Boston person, Boston sports fan to say that. We get to watch a play-in game, which great for a few reasons. When you get in a play-in game in NBA, that means you're just going to have a bad lottery. You've missed the lottery picks, and you're just in draft no man's land, and you're stuck in, you can't do anything.
And so, I think baseball, it starts off opening day. I know the Braves, things are not going well. But, like, for me, I always associate baseball as more of a summer sport than necessarily a pure spring.
I would agree with
opening
that.
day, it's got a special touch. And spring break, not the same since Club La Vila closed.
Oh, my God.
All right, you guys, take us home.
Was there anything else that we missed?
No, that opening day would have been the only one that I would have put on there. Kentucky did another great sports moment in the spring, but I think just getting outside, getting the sports, getting outside again is good things.
I was not prepared for a Club La Vila mention on this show.
When I think spring, it was a high school thing. It was anyway. Take us home.
I will take us home after that. Okay. Well, Connor. How was your birthday? Let's not ask what you learned. Why don't you tell me what your favorite thing you got for your birthday was?
I was I had something queued up this week. Birthday was low key, very nice. Went out to dinner, had a good time. But I learned this week just how much everyone appreciates Val Kilmer. Legendary actor passes away at the age of 65 this week. Ton of outpouring on social media. I think this guy, and look, I'm someone who loves movies. I know you do as well, Kaylee. Anytime he was in a movie, he absolutely made it better. I think you can put his filmography and the characters that he played up there with anyone. This is a guy that played Batman. Doc Holliday in Tombstone is obviously, I think, his most iconic role. He's in my favorite movie of all time, Heat. A true one-of-one actor, one of the all-time greats to do it, and someone who I think we will miss dearly. Obviously, the emotional crux of Top Gun Maverick as Tom Iceman Kaczynski.
I think somebody said this on the call the other day, but I actually remember that too, that was the only point in the movie in which I started to get a little bit emotional. But no, I completely agree. I was watching, I don't usually watch the news, shocker, but I saw that come on and just like the outpour of love. And then my dad's favorite movie of all time is Top Gun. So I know how much that means to him. And so that would have been a good one to do, like the Mount Rushmore of Val Kilmer movies, because such a large filmography. So anyway, I couldn't agree with that. I definitely thought you were going to say that you learned that I hate deviled eggs. So I was excited to hear a heartfelt answer from you. All right. With that, one last note on this. So next week, when Brandon Adams is out for his own spring break, Connor and I will be hosting DawgNation at Large, but it'll be in the Thursday morning slot. It will run again next Thursday at 7 o'clock, but you can check us out in the morning time, and hopefully we can make Brandon Adams proud. With that, I'm Kaylee Mansell with Connor Riley. This is DawgNation at Large, and we'll see you next Thursday at 10 a.m.